continuing to discuss the ninth chapter and it's the 22nd verse. So we can take it from here.
Yeah. Thank you, Kanan Siddharth. It's happy to be
Hare
back again.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Jai Srila Prabhupada. We are now on the next verse. This is the 32nd verse. We discussed verse 31 quite fully, I hope, last time. And oh, have you done 31?
Mm,
It is 30 that we did justice to. Did we do 31? I think we did do 31. Yes, we discussed the difference
yeah,
between
yeah,
accidental and
we did.
incidental fall down and so
Yeah,
on.
we
Okay, so
did.
we
Yes.
are diving straight into verse 32. Let's chant this together first.
Okay.
By the way, this is another of those highly misunderstood verses. The intention of the verse is lost because the contents are provocative, especially in a modern context. So we need to kind of take it apart nicely and set up a framework against which we are going to discuss this, which we will do shortly. Okay. Man hi partha
Partha
vyapashrit
Vyavasritya
ye pisyu papayo niyah striyo vaishyas tatha shudras te
Te
yanti param gati. Okay, again. Man hi partha vyapashrit
Ye
ye pisyu papayo striyo vaishyas tatha shudras te yanti param gatim. Again. Man hi partha vyapashritya ye pisyu papayo
Striyo
vaishyas tata
Shudras
shudras te
Devi Yati
yanti param gatim. Okay, straight away before we read the translation, these provocative, you see this word at the end of the first sentence, Papa Yonayaha, that is born of Papa, of sin, sinful. So, some groups or categories that are going to be discussed that have some kind of sinful qualities or born
I
of
think
a sinful background.
I think we discussed this, Vijay.
We discussed this, no, but the whole
Yeah.
verse we didn't do. We started it and we said we can't do justice to such a verse. I
Okay.
remember, yeah, okay, we did start it. We chanted and started it, that's true. And then you have in the next sentence, trio, female, ladies, women, Vaishya, the mercantile community, Shudra, Tatha Shudras, that is the laborer class, Tepi Yanti Paramgatim. All right. So here, please read the translation.
Osana Partha, those who take shelter in me, though they may be of lower birth, women, Vaishyas, merchants, and Shudras, workers, can attain the supreme destination.
Okay, Osana Pritha. Okay, Pritha, that is not
Pritha.
Partha. Arjuna is Partha and Pritha is his mother Kunti. So, O
Oh, okay.
son of Pritha, those who take shelter in me, though they be of lower birth, women, Vaishya, Shudras can attain the supreme destination. So, even before we get into the purport, clearly this business about the lower birth is what irritates and rankles people, especially in a modern context. So, first thing we need to understand is there is the path of dharma and then there is the path of bhakti. The path of dharma really means the traditional varna ashram dharma path. Now you have varnas and you have ashrams. So traditionally you have the varnas, of course, being the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras. And the ashrams, we are referring, of course, to start with as a brahmachari who studies and qualifies himself more and more, and then he gets into grihastha ashram, and then he goes on to vanapras, that is, becomes detached from family life, and finally he going to take
Sannyas.
sannyas and become renounced and really aiming for moksha. Now, parallel to this, for this track of dharma, which is completely different from the track of path of bhakti, parallel to this are the goals of this dharma, artha, kama, moksha. So for those who traditionally followed that traditional varnashram dharma path, aiming for dharma, that is, they do things, everything properly, righteously. They acquire artha, or meaning material goods, which facilitates their regulated or licensed sense enjoyment as a grihastha. They take a wife, they have progeny, they enjoy conjugal life with the wife, and so on. That is kama, because they first acquire, they do dharma, that is, they are born in a pious or environment with people who are very conscious of the human birth. To parents who are conscious that the human birth is rarely achieved and has to be guided properly, the child's. So that is the dharmic background. Then they grow up and they try to qualify themselves, again following the righteous path, take up a profession, take everyone's blessings. So they make money or artha, that is the material goods and material prosperity sets in. And very quickly they use that material prosperity to acquire the license to enjoy kama. That is, they acquire a spouse and then they start family life. So there is kama. And after having run through all that, their goal remains moksha or liberation. So this is the general pattern. Now here, some of the varnas have an advantage and some have a disadvantage. This is the whole point. But for bhakti, there is no such discrimination between the varnas as to who has an advantage and who has a disadvantage. This is completely missed by people who read this superficially and get very angry and provoked. So the traditional varnashram dharma path, or to abbreviate it, just on the path of dharma, the Brahmins traditionally had certain advantages. Brahmin just not just by birth, but meaning that it also traditionally matched, and they had the qualities of a Brahmin, that they come or are raised with the knowledge that life is eventually given to you to aim for moksha and for liberation and for spiritual growth and spiritual advancement. So traditionally, they are taught many austerities. They wake up really early, bathe in cold water, observe fast, observe rituals and pujas, put on the upanayan or the sacred thread, and it's not just sham like it is now. Change it on a particular day every year, and they fast on certain days. These are austerities. So they
Even
are, yeah, go
yeah,
on.
so even like even if you take today's time also, like in the material world that we live in today as well, there
Yeah,
are people who who act like you know who are like an elite group of people in this world, who have power,
elite.
they have money.
Yeah, yeah,
They always say that there's 1% of the wealthy, the top 1% control 99% of the
yeah, sure.
world's money. So in one sense, like that 1% is like the elite group of people that they have so much power, they can influence politicians,
Advantages.
they can influence
Okay.
politicians, people, and influence people. And if they want to if they want to develop some scientific research on anti-aging, they can do that, keep it for themselves and live longer and not let other people live. And there's also conspiracy theories. I mean, I don't want to get too much into it, but there's also a
Yeah,
conspiracy theory that that somebody like Bill Gates, who's this big
yeah, yeah,
billionaire and all that. I mean, about COVID, and there's things, or
yeah,
investing in
yeah.
pharmaceutical companies and all that stuff. So I don't want to level any allegation because the video might get struck down. But
Yeah, so
so
you're basically saying even today there is an elite group that has
and
certain huge advantages, right?
yeah, it just morphed into something else. Like I think what it was before, it was one thing. Now it's no difference. It's just that the
No, but
rest of
there is a big difference, Siddharth, because Brahmins traditionally are inclined towards studying and education.
yeah, I'm talking, but I
Yeah,
was talking about
the advantages,
the
the
material world,
privileges. You're
the
talking
material
about
world.
in the material
Yeah,
world. All right,
material
okay.
world.
But traditionally, the Brahmins, the privileges or the advantages they have is that they are seem to be more cut out
Mm.
by birth and by the training they get through the childhood for the life of a Brahmin, which involves lots of austerities. It's not about just eating nice big feasts and eating lot of laddus. It's not the way it's made out in these kind of cinemas and films. They actually had to observe a lot of austerities to stay focused that this world is not the final destination, and they have to try to get out of here. So whereas for the other varnas, that is the Kshatriyas, self restraint is very difficult. by nature and by birth and by duties they do, they react very strongly, very quickly. They are entitled to opulence, they are entitled to a rich and lavish life, as in while doing their duty as a king. But on the other hand, they have to be so brave and so courageous that in doing their duty, they may just get killed like that prematurely, because it is their part of their duty to protect others, to fight if they have been challenged to a fight. So many other stories that we see in the Bhagavatam and the other Puranas. So that's for Kshatriya Varna. So why are they are less they are less in an advantageous position for spiritual life, because they are very much dealing with the material world, dealing with life and death situations, having to show courage, entitled to opulence, entitled to marry more than one person, because if they can produce progeny of these Kshatriya qualities, that's good for the kingdom. That was the traditional understanding. So they very much enmeshed in material prosperity and things. So unlike the Brahmana, they are less qualified or less easily able to take to the spiritual path. For the Vaishya, because he is so mercantile class, he is so much into buying and selling and making profit, even less so his inclination towards the other world or towards the spiritual path. For the Shudra, life is a struggle. He works very hard. He lives at the sweet will. The quality of his life depends on the sweet will of his employer or his boss. For him again, the spiritual path is a little more difficult, and the Shudra generally is not expected to have the ability to think, to analyze, to acquire knowledge, which the Brahmana has most of all. So how is he going to absorb all these difficult philosophical topics regarding spirituality and spiritual life? So that's why in this category of Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, on the path of dharma or on the path of varnashram dharma, there are advantages and disadvantages according to the categories they have in terms of acquiring liberation or moksha, which is the final goal for that group. But on the other hand, on the path of bhakti, there is no such discrimination at all, because there is no particular advantage. Bhakti itself is such a powerful weapon, like a rocket, that you just clamber on and that it propels you forward, no matter what kind of background basically you have grown up or you have come out of. Now, so before we jump into why women are lumped with these Vaishyas and Shudras, before we come to it, let's just take a quick step backwards to the previous verse and understand what the connection is between these two. Now, this is the specific connection. Listen carefully. The previous verse talked about, or rather, the 30th verse. The previous verse is just a continuation of the verse 30. That verse which talked about fall downs and how he should still be considered sadhu reva samantavya, saintly person, that is talking about accidental or incidental fall downs, not something, not a shortcoming that is inherent or in the character of the person. Got it? So that 30 and 31 were talking about fall downs and mistakes and pollution and sinful stuff that happens accidentally or incidentally, briefly in the life of a spiritual person, basically heading back to the Supreme Lord, irrespective of whether he is Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Now, this verse 32 is not talking about this accidental or incidental, but it's talking about shortcomings that are there inherent in the nature and the birth and the background of that category. Because as we just said, for the Brahmanas, it is really speaking about the path of dharma, where if you're going to take the traditional path of dharma and go through the 4 ashrams and finally go through dharma, artha, kama, moksha, edipo moksha, the Brahmins have an advantage because they have all the knowledge is imparted to them as they are growing. They are trained in austerity. By practicing those austerities, they get realization of the fact that we are not this body, and so on. Kshatriya less so, because the Kshatriya is completely enmeshed in material prosperity, he has a right to it. It is his privilege. And then the Vaishyas and the Shudras. So these are, we are talking about inherent disqualifications or limitations in the nature of people born into these categories. Not an accidental sinful reaction or an accidental and incidental and temporary fall down. We're talking about something inherent in it. But that's again on the path of dharma. Whereas when it comes to bhakti, which is what really verse 30 was talking about, verse 30 was not talking about people on the path of dharma. Because the people on the path of dharma, you mess up and you basically pay a very heavy price. On the path of bhakti, you are forgiven. There is so much mercy, and Krishna is watching and will make all arrangements for you to continue on that path. So in verse 32, the point being made here is, never mind if they belong to the weaker categories who are traditionally disqualified or less qualified to make it to moksha on the path of dharma, all these people will come to me, including the women who are lumped here along with the Vaishyas and the Shudras. Ye sepi yanti param gatim. Basically, that they can also attain the supreme destination. They just need to take the path of bhakti and think of me, and as he will say in the remaining two verses of this, surrender their mind, soul, and body to me. So here, but the point that is being made is that it is not a disqualification at all on the path of bhakti. And then now comes the question: why are women being put in this category as Vaishyas and Shudras? Of why this sinful people of sinful birth? Basically, the point is this: that man or woman, the human birth itself is a kind of very powerful blessing to be used with proper knowledge and understanding. Never mind if you're a man or a woman. Now, if you're a woman, why is it considered a disqualification, and why have women been lumped with people of lower birth? Here, lower birth specifically meaning disadvantaged to make a full spiritual advancement, whether on the path of dharma or on the path of bhakti. But bhakti, it is not a disqualification. What is the disadvantages? Women tend to be more in bodily consciousness. Women tend to find it more difficult to basically practice detachment. There are always exceptions. That's a different matter. Women find it very difficult to overcome the tendency to be overpowered and overwhelmed by emotions. They just get completely swept away and carried away. Basically, they are said to have a softer heart. So here, the inability or the lower having finding it difficult to practice detachment, uh, it is, and being in bodily consciousness. Being in bodily consciousness meaning is here meaning clearly that the female tendency to be very much concerned about appearances, beauty and looks and aging, and building a whole kind of personality around how they appear, or their whole self-image is built around that. That's certainly true in most cases. Of course, nowadays it's all very confusing, because you have male beauty parlors and you have parlors for dogs and you have dog shampoos, and
Yeah.
so it's there's these distinctions and these things that are generally generic foundational principles that are taken for granted don't even really apply now, it seems. Now, here also that women find it very difficult to practice detachment, basically because they give birth to another human being from their body. They keep that child within their stomach or womb for many months. They nourish it with stuff that is going sucked from their body. So women even die in childbirth because the childbirth is difficult. So which means that they end up even losing their life in order to bring another life out. So this is so common, and therefore, because of this strong biological connection, it is very difficult for a woman to remain detached from her son or daughter, or some the person that she has brought out, into the world. These are the reasons why it is considered that they are disadvantaged on the spiritual path, because detachment is a very important quality. Then, but on the other hand, in different places, ISKCON's founder Srila Prabhupada says that you will see for most spiritual or religious programs, the halls are full of women. They tend to be more emotional, so their emotions are easily stirred and provoked in the direction of love of God, and that's a great advantage for them. You don't need to philosophically argue and convince them for them to surrender to Krishna. It takes very little. You just ask them to do some service and their heart melts, and they see, think of Krishna as a baby, almost like the baby they had when they were young, or they like the form of the deity, and they're willing to do different services, and they are in a traditionally in a submissive mood. But the other
So,
danger is, yeah, go on.
would it, I just want to doubt about like, would it be a stretch to say that women do like, is it right or something to say that women would do better like when doing service at a temple, like an ISKCON temple or something, or is that is that something that is like you know in general is it like that or is it like that?
No, I'll tell you what happens is, generally women take to these simpler services. You will see that this creativity, they don't need to philosophically understand and qualify themselves. They just told bathe and come when you come for the service. Fine, they go, they tie flowers, they try new designs for garlands, they cook dishes that they know, they even go on to YouTube and find new dishes and make it. So you'd see all this. It's just like this creativity to take a tough text takes to water. What happens is, in some cases, at some stage, what is called the Purusha Bhav, that male and masculine egoistic desire to lord it over others and to be given recognition, gets triggered off in them. And that's a real trap. It is part of the trap of being equal to men, and why can't we have the same positions, and why can't we be temple presidents, and why can't we become sannyasis, and why can't we become gurus? It's in one sense a trap, because this Purusha Bhav overtakes them, and what are their natural strengths is to very quickly give affection to the Lord. Be submissive, be tolerant. After all, they've tolerated the horrors of childbirth and so much physical pain every month. All that just goes out of the window because this they get infected by the Purusha Bhav. On the other hand, I've seen so many good male devotees who I knew 20 years ago were very inspiring personally, very sattvic. They really came to the movement forgetting many things. And then they helped so many, brought so many to the, made so many sacrifices. The same Purusha Bhav raises its ugly head inside their heart when they're like touching 40 maybe, that what have they really achieved to show their family and to show society and to show themselves. They must have the particular position. They start fighting. They should have been made the temple president. TP is short for temple president. And then like it's there's just chaos. So it is for both for men and for women. The bottom line is they should remember that the human birth is a very rare opportunity not to be lost, to go back and to achieve spiritual realization and self realization. For women,
And
what is considered a disadvantage is sometimes a huge advantage until they start this Purusha Bhav track.
it's almost like women have all the capabilities actually to perform bhakti and it's the best way possible, but because of maybe like influence of the maybe the
Material
male
energy,
ego
Maya.
or the male or whatever it may be, because I mean with men it's like if you're a man, you know that one thing you know for sure is that it's very difficult for a man to give love to another man
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
on anything. And men are generally even worse when it comes to dealing with other men than when it comes to dealing with women because uh, you know there even though like there may be some men who will think like will have these views like that women are like this or whatever, but a lot of there is also the view that women are generally more kind-hearted. So why would they say something like this? Or why would they won't treat me that bad? But you even as a man, inherently that that this is another man by the way. Like, if I can't be so nice to him. If I be nice to him, he'll do this to me. So there's the other aspect of it with if you're a male, you also know this other aspect like that okay he's nice but you never know he can be like this. Whereas with a woman, like even if like even if you don't know you don't know the woman properly or you don't know what's gonna happen, they're still in the back of your mind like they're generally nice. nice, or they're better than men at least when it comes to like being nice and compassionate. So they're not generally, even men also have a feeling that they're going to be nice to you, you know, in general ways. Sure, it may not be the case all the time, but in general, there's a feeling if you're a man, that okay, they're going to be like a woman's going to be nice. A man, though, I'm not sure because like they can, like they can backstab you, they can do this, they can do that.
Right, right. Uh-huh.
And as a guy, I think one of the other biggest problems is that also this issue is like you're constantly like in like some kind of survival mode in one sense, where you're trying
Survival. Uh-huh. Survival
yeah,
mode. Right. Uh-huh.
always trying to there's this feeling of trying to be better than the other guy, or there's a lot of ego, a lot of jealousies there, and a lot of like material opulence and trying to show that they are better and all that stuff. I mean, I see it with women also. There are women also who do it, but I wouldn't say at the level of at the level of men in the sense that way they do it to the point where they will not you know they'll not hesitate, like if they know that you're another guy, then they sometimes be in worse. I think even this guy, even Garuda Das also said this in that episode, right? That
Uh-huh.
Prabhupada sometimes was even more like he used to call men like
Yes.
all even worse things. Like he used to like say
Yeah,
something
yeah,
like
yeah. Dogs,
dog,
hogs,
dogs,
asses, yeah,
hogs,
yeah.
rats,
Camels and horses. Yeah.
and you wouldn't say that to a woman because you feel like a woman's not gonna like, not because they are of anything else, but there's also the other aspect of like they're very nice and kind, you know.
But
So
by the way, just one correction: the dogs, hogs, camels, and asses is coming from the Bhagavatam, not from Prabhupada. It's a
okay,
direct translation of a verse. You see that the Bhagavatam is basically talking about human beings taking the male birth, but not using it for spiritual realization. That this is the life of a dog, hog, camel, or ass. You can take your pick. Just like it's a Bhagavad Gita that is calling women, putting them in a category of sinful birth. So, what you're saying fundamentally is correct, but neither is blocked from the path of bhakti. And as for women being soft hearted, and in the Bhagavatam itself, where Draupadi, even after her 5 sons are killed, she refuses to have Ashwatthama beheaded because, after all, what will his father Dronacharya think? And that's when the punishment is reduced to how, what is the punishment? His hair will be cut off, and that he will always have a stink coming out of his body, and he will roam different planets and universes, but always there will be this terrible stink from his body. But
yeah,
it was
right.
yeah, remember. You remember that
But
verse? Yeah,
yeah, I was also listening. Actually, like now I'm reading that book, no, Krishna, the Supreme Personality
yeah,
of Godhead.
yeah, yeah,
So I was reading the 50th chapter, I think it was, where they were the story of Krishna defeats like his enemies. I think that's the name of the chapter, where
yeah,
this is like he's defeated Kamsa, and he's established. He's now basically like the kind of the king of. No, sorry, king is still Ugrasen, I think,
yeah.
but he is like basically he's handling everything there. That's mainly the thing. So
Right,
Jarasandha, like the wives of Kamsa become widows and all that stuff, right? Because Kamsa is
right,
dead.
right.
They
Yeah.
have to, according to tradition, they'll have to either be protected by the brother. If the brother is not, the brother also not there because Krishna's killed all of them, right? And
Yes.
so brother is not there, so then by default they'll have to go to their father, who happens to be Jarasandha, I think, in that thing. So they
Right.
go to him. Jarasandha is an ally of Kamsa, and
Yeah.
Jarasandha gets very angry. He's like, "I'm going to defeat Krishna," and so he
Uh-huh.
has like these armies of phalanxes and all that. They come and they try to attack Mathura. Krishna and Balaram alone just destroy the entire army of Jarasandha,
I
and
see.
then
Okay.
he goes back, and then he goes back humiliated. Like he's like very humiliated. But what happens is that when he's defeated,
Uh-huh.
Balarama is tying him up with he's tying him up basically. But Krishna says no, let him go because he's like this is even worse insult to him because by letting him go, he's kind of like he's like there's like a shame attached to it. No, like you lost, you're going back to
Right.
your kingdom and all that stuff. So Krishna's like, let him go, it's fine. So then he lets him go, and then he goes back, and then he gets ill-advised. Like all these people, like this is like the typical people who you get bad advice from. When you things are going bad, you when you hear bad advice, this is what will happen. Like they told him, like, that, oh, it's this happened, it was ill luck, it was unlucky, it was
Yes.
unlucky, you will get him next time, whatever. And he takes another, and he does this 17 times.
Uh-huh.
17 times Jarasandha tries to attack Mathura, and 17 times he fails. And every time he comes to attack, at the end, Krishna will be like, yeah, you can go back. I'm not going to die. I'm not going to take you as a prisoner. You go back. And every time he has to walk back in like a shameful way, like, no, I lost again, I lost again, I lost again. And yeah, so I was reading that. I was finding interesting because I was like, Krishna's like, I mean, they could have easily taken him and put him in chains and put him in the thing and made him feel sad. But in one sense, like, even though, like, even though Jarasandha wouldn't want to be chained up and all that, in one sense, like, the heart would still feel a bit better than at least not being humiliated like 17 times, having
Mm,
lost again, going back again, losing, it shows how, like, not powerful you are, and how the male, like, the ego that was wrapped around him,
right, right.
that so much of ego that you think you can defeat, you can
Krishna, the
you
Supreme Personality. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's a personality, like, you think you can defeat Krishna. You keep and you're so delusioned in your mind that you think you can keep defeating. Krishna comes and defeat and then lets you go, and you
Mm,
and gets even worse with the false, all the ill advice that you get. Um, yeah, it's
mm,
sad because, like, you see that even in gambling also, when you're in this poker
yeah,
place, or these gambling places and all that. People start gambling and start winning little bit. They're like, oh, I want to keep putting more money into this,
right, right. Yeah,
and
like an
they go
addiction.
and,
Yeah.
yeah, addiction, and then they lose all the money after that, and so then everything goes. So like that, Jarasandha also is like, because of that ego that's there,
And you are
he kind of,
saying that men, in your opinion, you've seen all this backstabbing and destroying other men are not able to relate. You find that very much there, whereas you're saying women are, and you would basically you would make that point. That's very good. That for men it's always like in survival mode, and for women not so, because traditionally in most society,
yeah.
yeah, go on.
So I mean, this is also another point I've heard somebody else will say this, where like women in general, like, have this, they're more together in one sense, and
Or do you
they're
think that
like,
they get protection from the male members of their system? Some
I don't
protection,
think,
if not.
I don't think that's the thing. I think women are a bit more united in their way of, in their, I think women are like, I think most women are like, united in, like, if there's like a group, like, think they're all, like, they come together with with a common idea, with a common
Right.
purpose. I think men like to think that we are united, but I feel like what happens is that we are not so united in the sense that, like, the minute you put us in a group, immediately
Yeah.
there is like a judgment of what is the hierarchy now. So
Ah, I understand. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
who's the, like, okay, we are all in this team, but who's the powerful, who's the second, third, fourth, who's the weakest? And the minute some opportunity comes, then other members of the group will start to establish themselves, or
Right, right.
so I think in when it comes to women, especially men, I think, like, it's all broken up into like small pieces. So like within the group itself, there's like a lot of divisions itself, like, and is yeah, I think the unity that's there is also not a real type of unity, where
Right, right, right.
it's kind of like a artificial sort of unity. That's, I think what happens is not unity, but what happens is, like, what they say is uniformity, where one
Okay.
person who's the strongest will try to make everybody the same, and there's always a hierarchy in the top. So that's why, like, a lot of times, it's important for a guy to become physically strong. If you
Uh-huh.
become physically strong, then you may not be able to, like, talk. If, let's say, you're not able to talk properly, like, you don't know how to talk and convince people. If you're physically strong, you'll be like, I don't care what you say, I can beat you up, right? So you listen to whatever
Right,
I say.
right.
So it's like that.
Uh-huh.
So so it's like the hierarchy is like, who's the most physically strong person, and who's also the most, like, who can communicate also. That person is like the most powerful in the group. and he will dictate, like, how things should go, stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah,
So
there's a lot in what you're saying, that for women to form that kind for women to form a team and work together, it's a lot easier. For men,
yeah,
it's difficult, because I think the male conditioning is that they must always be in control. So to get them to all become part of a uniform group, like you're saying, they subconsciously start thinking what is the
it's more
hierarchy,
difficult.
who is
More
actually superior and who is inferior. Yeah, there is. So, like you said, bottom line is that the human birth is very rare, whether you're a man or woman. Each one starts with certain advantages and disadvantages on the supreme path, but Krishna is specifically saying here that all types can come to him. The type who has an accidental fall down and picks himself up, the types that are considered disadvantaged on the path of spiritual life, all of them basically paramgatim, they can attain the supreme destination if they try hard enough, and they're all dear to him. So, shall we read the purport to this 32nd verse, please?
Yeah,
It is clearly declared here. That one.
yeah. It is clearly declared here by the Supreme Lord that in devotional service there is no distinction between the lower and higher classes of people. In the material conception of life, there are such divisions, but for a person engaged in transcendental devotional service to the Lord, there are not. Everyone is eligible for the supreme destination. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 4, Text 18, it is stated that even the lowest, who are called Chandalas, dog eaters, can be purified by association with a pure devotee. Therefore, devotional service and the guidance of a pure devotee are so strong that there is no discrimination between the lower and higher classes of men. Anyone can take to it. The most simplest man taking shelter of the pure devotee can be purified by proper guidance. According to the different modes of material nature, men are classified in the mode of goodness, Brahmanas the mode of passion, Kshatriyas are administrators, the mixed modes of passion and ignorance, Vaishyas are merchants, and the mode of ignorance, Shudras are workers. Those lower than them are called Chandalas, and they are born in sinful families. Generally, the association of those born in sinful families is not accepted by the higher classes. But the process of devotional service is so strong that the pure devotee of the Supreme Lord can enable people of all lower classes to attain the highest perfection of life. This is possible only when one takes shelter of Krishna, as indicated here by the word Vyapas Ritya.
Satya.
One has to
Ashraya
take
means shelter. Yeah, Ashraya means shelter. Okay, yeah.
one has to take shelter of community of Krishna. Then one can become much greater than the great Gyanis and Yogis.
Okay, can you kindly just call up that verse from the Bhagavatam 2.4.18?
Bhagavatam
I think this is the one, Kirata Punandra Pulinda Pulkasha, that famous verse. I will just do a Google search here for
Yeah, I
Kirata
got
Punandra.
it.
Yeah?
Yeah, got it. This one, no?
Yeah, is it that
Kirata.
one? Yeah, that's the one. This is talking, these are names of different kingdoms. The
Oh,
Greek, the Huns, the Germans, there's a very radically progressive verse. Yeah, Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Pulkasha, Abhira Shumbaya. I can't read clearly, but it's coming back into my memory because it's small.
let me try to
The text.
can you
See
see
if
it
you
now?
can. Yeah, I can. Yeah. Kirata Hunandra, Huna and Andhra as in Andhra Pradesh. Imagine. Pulinda Pulkasha. The Pulkasha is again one particular um, province. Yeah. Abhira Shumbha Yavana, the Yavana race.
Yeah.
Even in history books, yeah. Yavana race. Kasa Daya Yenye Chapapa Yadapashraya Shubhyanti Tasmai Prabhavai Vishnave Namaha. It is, and we're talking about the Khasa race are like the Mongolians. And traditionally, they were considered people of very low eating habits, eat rats, whatever is available, lowest kind of creatures. So here, Kirat, a province of old Bharat, okay. Huna, that is the Huns are coming, the Huns are coming in, again, history books just go back, Germany and Russia, parts of Germany, Andhra, province in southern India, Pulinda, the Greeks, Pulkasha, another province, Abhira, that is old Sindh, Shumbha, different names, Yavana, the Turks. So we have here, very surprisingly, the Greeks, the Turks. Now we are going to have the Mongolians, Khasa race. As even these some northeastern people, the Khasa tribe, this slightly slit-eye, chinky look, that Mongolian province. Even those and others addicted to sinful actions, if they take shelter of the devotees of the Lord, not even directly of the Supreme Lord, they become purified and etc. Again, I can't read the last one. Last, just scroll up a little, please. Can you
Yeah.
scroll up a little? No, meaning I wanted to read the translation. Sorry, I
Oh,
don't know
okay.
what you have to do. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so these, but taking shelter of the devotees of the Lord, due to his being the supreme power, they, what happens to them? They get purified, and never mind however sinful they have been. So basically, it is a direct tie-up between this verse in the Bhagavatam and the verse here that we just discussed. Or we're discussing that even if it seems that they are disadvantaged, they have such dirty eating habits, their sense of morality less said the better. The cleanliness, maybe very cold climates, there's no system of even a daily bath. What to talk of twice daily and keeping yourself in satoguna. Never mind, but because if no matter how many years they have spent like that, if they get onto the boat of bhakti and they take to the process of bhakti and particularly take shelter of a devotee of the Lord, they get purified and they can make progress. So this is one of those striking verses which is telling you, it is mentioning regions of the world 5,000 years ago, which we know as foreign countries and foreign communities, the Turks, the Greeks, the Huns, the Russians, the Mongolians, and so on.
But
So really,
I was like,
yeah, go on.
how do they know? Like, I mean, this is Turkey is like, I mean, it's obviously the country now is very far to the west of the Middle East, but um, they knew places like all the way to like Russia and all stuff, Russia, Mongolia, and all that stuff.
Yes, yes, yes,
That
yes,
is,
because we are talking of 5,000 years ago where the world view and world perspective was different, and I can't get into that whole debate, but they very much knew. I mean, just scroll up a little. I mean, those parts of Turkey, etc., they're not that far away from India. See, the words are not as we know it today, isn't it? The Yavans are the Turks, but today we know them as the Turkish people. But definitely there was trade, there was contact, there were people coming looking for spiritual wisdom, there was influence of spiritual truths from here incorporated into their spiritual understanding and also into their art and architecture and sculpture and so on.
hmm.
You can research a little more on this verse when you get the time. This is one of the verses that caught my fascination, caught my attention very early in my studies 20 years ago. Because it's not just that it is so broad-minded bhakti. It is not blocking of anyone. People here are fighting that they've been called the lower. Women have been lumped with the lower categories, but whole point is that nobody is blocked off. They can all attain perfection. And Bhagavatam is telling you that we're not talking any longer about the lower caste here in India. We're talking about people addicted to a sinful way of life, like as I said, very much people who are in tamasic eating habits, tamasic lifestyle, partly induced by the weather, partly just the way that civilization is developed. Even those people can get purified by taking shelter of the Lord. Okay, so now verse 33, we're going on to verse 33. It's like now summing up,
Um,
winding up rather, not summing up.
yeah, yeah. So you say that.
It's little too small, but I have my book here. It's just that I
Oh wait,
didn't write.
I'll increase the zoom size. Yeah. Now you can see it.
Okay. Kim punar brahmana punya
Brahmanya Bhakta
bhakta
Raja
raja
Tata
raja something rishayo. Okay, 1 minute.
Raja
Kim punar brahmana punya bhakta raja rishayo tatha tatha
Tataya
tatha.
Tata
Then
Tyaman
anityam
Shukam
anityam asukam lokam.
Mam Prapya Bhajasvamam
Okay, imam prapya bhajasya mam. Again, kim punar
Brahmana
brahmana punya
Bhakta
Bhaktaraja
Rajaya
Rishayastata
Tata Anityam
Anityam Asukam
Kam
Lokam
Imam Prapya Bhajas
Jasya Mam. Again, Kim Punar Brahmana Punya
Bhakta
Bhaktaraja Rishayastata
Anityam
Anityam
Asukam
Asukam Lokam
Imam
Imam
Prapya Bhajas.
Jamam. Okay, so please read the translation.
It's
How much more?
um,
Yeah.
yeah. How much more of this is so of the righteous Brahmanas, the devotees and the saintly kings. Therefore, having come to this temporary miserable world, engage in loving service unto me.
All right. So here we until now we've been talking about the people who are disadvantaged and how even they make it to supreme destination. So he's basically like concluding, speaking very in connection with the previous verses, but concluding saying that if they make it, then where is the question of how much more is that the case for the righteous brahmanas, the devotees, and the Rajarishis, the saintly kings? Yeah. Therefore, having come to this temporary miserable world, engage in loving service unto me. This anityam asukam lokam. Second sentence. Anityam, it's not eternal, it's temporary. It winds up and everything here keeps changing. Nothing remains the same. Asukam lokam. It's a place of misery. Having come, since we find ourselves here, what should we be doing? Um, Imam Prapye, meaning you found yourself here. Where? In this Anityam Asukam Lokam. So what should we do? Bhajasve Imam. Therefore, just worship me, engage in loving service unto me, and basically, as Prabhupada says, make the best use of a bad bargain. We find ourselves in this problematic human body, although the human birth is very rarely achieved and has to be used carefully for its real purpose. The fact is that this material body that we are stuck with is highly problematic, and as age advances, learn the truths of janma mrityu jara vyadhi, and even if you are not old or elderly, you have all these different kleshas troubling you. That is problems from within the body, problems from within the mind, problems from other creatures, that insect bites, reptiles, snakes, other human beings, and finally natural disasters like this latest cyclone in Chennai. So that's going to keep going on and on. But despite all that, having finding ourselves in this miserable world, in this miserable body, we make the best use of a bad bargain and use this opportunity to engage in loving service of the Lord, and that way reduce our misery greatly. The question that gets asked is, if we are stuck here in a temporary and miserable world, does that really mean that we therefore should always be miserable? What is the meaning that we should never be happy? Because the Mayavadis often interpret it like this is all mithya. Don't rejoice at anything. Don't get joy out of life at all. Because anyway, it is all false. But see, the world is not false. It's very real. You step on a snake, it will bite you. It's not mithya, it's real. It's just that the snake and you are temporary. So the world is temporary, it is not mithya or false as the Mayavadi philosophy tries to make out. And the whole point here is that just because the world is miserable doesn't mean that we have to be miserable. What we are being cautioned to do is to not put our entire energy into trying to be comfortable in this world, because there is no guarantee it's going to work. Naturally, some of our energy we are going to put into making sure we are comfortable in this world. You will make sure that you have a roof over your head. You will make sure that you have some either a partner or some loving family around you, a profession, something that satisfies, something that brings in bread and butter money. So those are things that require our effort. We can't just sit down and say world is miserable and therefore I am going to be miserable. That's not what's meant here. It's what we're being told to do or instructed is that we don't put all our energy in trying to make ourselves comfortable in this world, because that is foolish. Not only is it not going to be possible, that's not what this is meant to be. This place is meant to be. So the purport here, I'll just read now. In this material world, there are classifications of people, but after all, this world is not a happy place for anyone. It is clearly stated here, Anityam Asukam Lokam. The world is temporary and full of miseries, not habitable for any sane gentleman. The world is declared by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to be temporary and full of misery. Some philosophers, especially the Mayavadi philosophers, watch out, say that this world is false or mithya. But we can understand from the Bhagavad Gita that the world is not false, it's just that it's temporary. There is a difference between temporary and false. This world is temporary, but there is another world which is eternal, which is the spiritual world, the spiritual sky. The world is miserable, but the other world is eternal and blissful. Arjuna was born in a saintly royal family. To him also the Lord says, take to my devotional service. So meaning that even if you're born as a cousin of the Lord to the royal family of the Pandavas, your plight is the same because you are stuck here. So he says, take to my devotional service and come quickly back to Godhead, back home. No one should remain in this temporary world, full as it is with miseries. Everyone should attach himself to the bosom of the Supreme Personality of Godhead so that he can be eternally happy. The devotional service of the Supreme Lord is the only process by which all problems of all classes of men can be solved. Everyone should therefore take to Krishna consciousness and make his life perfect. The problem with the Mayavadi outlook is because it just creates an atmosphere of even more gloom, and people who are highly influenced by Mayavad philosophy, you will see they hesitate to show any kind of positive emotions. They
Mm.
hesitate to celebrate something. Their mind is full of fear, and they've been indoctrinated into thinking that this all false anyway, so don't react at all. It's not false. That's the classic case of a Mayavadi follower in Calcutta in our times, in my time, maybe 10 years ago, because he was all out to prove that the world is false. So he somehow managed to get into a cage in the zoo in Calcutta and took a garland to put it on the head of a tiger, a real live
Uh,
tiger there. Basically, meaning that we are all same. There's no difference between the tiger and me, and anyway, the whole world is false. So, what did the tiger do? Naturally, it bit his head off. Stupidity carried to an extreme. So, Mayavadi is also at a practical level a most dangerous and stupid philosophy. It's like we just think practically, if someone gets it into their head that we are all one, there is no difference, God is we and we are God, and therefore the tiger and we, there is no difference at all, and that anyway the whole world is mithya or false, don't take it seriously, and then you go and do something stupid like this. It's so Here Krishna is concluding in this last verse. um, it's So what are we supposed to do, having found ourselves in this temporary miserable world? We are not supposed to just sit down making ourselves more miserable. No, we are supposed to very much celebrate this opportunity to worship the Supreme Lord and to understand and get into the secrets of this relationship, and to revive the natural joyful and blissful quality of our soul, which is Satchit Ananda Vigraha. That is his quality, Satchit Ananda. Sorry, Vigraha is the deity. The Therefore, what are we supposed to do? And that is given in what is this is considered the essence of the essence of the essence of the Gita, this 34th verse. Let's chant together.
yeah. Manmana
Manmana bhava
bhakto
madbhakto
madhyaji
madhyaji mam namaskuru mame vaishyasi
mamaivaishasi tvaivam
yuktvaivam
atmanamaparayana
atmanam. Okay. Manmana bhava madbhakto
bhakto
madhyaji mam
madhyaji
namaskuru mame
mamaivaishasi
vaishyasi mad.
tvaivam vaivam atmanamaparayana
Again. Manmana
bhavamadbhakto
1 minute. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru
mam
mamai
evaishasi
vaishyasi
evam atmana parayana.
namatmanah. All right. Please read the translation.
So,
Engage your mind.
yeah, engage your mind in always thinking of me, become my devotee, offer obeisances to me, and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me.
All right. So here, uh, this is like asking for total surrender. It's a very high bhakti verse. Why do we say total surrender? Because if you analyze the verse or break it up, mana, that is your mind, give it to me. What does it mean to say offer your mind to me? It means just use the mind always in thinking of the Lord. And is it okay to think of the Lord like Kamsa did, kill him, kill him, kill him? No, not at all. So therefore, it means that it's not just that the mind thinks in a clinically cold and scientific way about the Lord. The heart has also to God get involved. That is, think of me with devotion. So now you've offered the mind to the Lord, you're offering your heart also. Okay, the heart also goes. And then it says, worship me and offer obeisance unto me. How do you do that? You need the body to do it. Literally doing dandavats pranam, doing namaskaram. You need your physical body to do it. Worship me, you need your body. You have to wave your hands around, and whether it is an arati or whether you are just doing like a namaste form to worship the Lord when you stand in front of a deity. So this is really asking for surrender of mind, body, and soul. Soul meaning as in the case of the heart, that not think of me doesn't mean like Kamsa or those who were an inimical to the Lord, just thinking clinically when they can destroy the Lord, not in that sense, but think with love. So the heart or the soul also gets involved. And then it's not enough just to keep thinking this, not just smaranam, but you also have to do archanam, vandanam, those different the parts or the different elements of bhakti, which is there in another textbook and which pops up sometimes in the Bhagavad Gita. It's you have to also use your body to do this loving service of the Lord. Please read the purport.
It
In
is,
this
it is
verse,
in this verse, it is clearly indicated that Krishna consciousness is the only means of being delivered from the clutches of this contaminated material world. Sometimes unscrupulous commentators distort the meaning of what is clearly stated here, that all devotional service should be offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. Unfortunately, unscrupulous commentators divert the mind of the reader to that which is not at all feasible. Such commentators do not know that there is a difference between Krishna's mind and Krishna. Krishna is not an ordinary human being. He is absolute truth. His body, his mind, and he himself are one and absolute. It is stated in the Kurma Purana, as it is quoted by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami in his Anubhashya comments on Chaitanya Charitamrita, 5th chapter, Adi Leela, verse 41-48. Deha Dehi Vivedo Yam Neshware Vidyate Kvachit. This means that there is no difference in Krishna, the Supreme Lord, between himself and his body. But because the commentators do not know the signs of Krishna, they hide Krishna and divide his personality from his mind or from his body. Although this is sheer ignorance of the signs of Krishna, some men profit out of mistaking people.
okay, please
And
read on. There are some who are demonic.
yeah, so there are some who are
Okay, no, no,
demonic.
no, wait, no, don't go into Kamsa. Wait. This first, where Prabhupada is kind of not naming any particular person, but is talking of how there are commentators, that unscrupulous commentators that divert the mind of the reader to that which is not at all feasible. Any idea from your general reading what this is a reference to? I do know, but I
Yes,
just thought, yeah, go on.
Radha
Yes,
Krishna
yes, yes.
Gita, that one.
Exactly. Yes, yes, correct. Yeah. It is very much a reference to a Gita translation by our earlier esteemed president and scholar S. Radhakrishnan, Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan. Because what he does is this, particularly this verse, where Krishna is directly saying, surrender to me, give me your mind, give me your soul and heart, worship me with your body. Somehow, for reasons only he knows, he confuses that and says it is not to Krishna that you have to surrender, it is the unborn within Krishna. Now, this is really confusing for the reader. I started my Gita studies, I never got that far, so I was saved. I never got beyond the first chapter, which I by hearted when I was in England. But that was the Gita that was readily available in a bookshop near where I lived. So I went and I didn't know anything, so I just took that and took it abroad with me, and I loved the first chapter, and I learned it by heart and recited it every day, and I liked mention of the Atma and the soul in the second chapter, but never got beyond it with that book. So this is very confusing. You start telling people it is not to Krishna, but it is to the unborn within Krishna. What are they supposed to make of it? What is this unborn? You just get so obfuscated, there's a word, or so confused that you say, forget it, don't surrender at all. What the hell is this unborn within Krishna? So this is Prabhupada, because of the rules of decorum of the publishing world, he can't say anything more here. But it really is true, because when repeatedly Krishna is drawing the reader and Arjuna closer and closer, such sweet exchanges are taking place, compared to how it started in the first chapter with the nice the whacking that Arjuna got for his stupidity and foolishness and his fear to fight and forgetting his Kshatriya duties and so on. But coming from that, he's really drawing even the reader closer and closer, revealing so much about bhakti. And then suddenly someone comes along and says, no, it is not to Krishna that you, it has been compared like the rape of the Gita. It is a horrible violence that is being inflicted on the Bhagavad Gita, which Krishna is specifically speaking to bring people on the path. The Bhagavad Gita has been compared by people like a love letter from Krishna, not just to Arjuna, but to this Jiva, that is you and me, sitting here bewildered, confused, not knowing where we are going. He's telling us so much how to navigate this material world, how the three modes work, what to expect, what not to expect, how to recognize our own nature by studying when we come to chapter 14, the three modes. Are we more sattvic or rajasic or tamasic, or a combination of everything as we usually are? How to recognize how the material energy works and bewilders our consciousness. What is so many useful things are given here.
It also it makes it clear, but also Krishna makes it clear in the 18th chapter that that I've explained everything to you, and at the end, that said that verse, the 53rd verse, where he tells Arjuna that for what use of this knowledge is to you. In the end, you deliberate on this
And
fully,
then
and decide
decide.
what
Yeah,
you wish to
gives him
do.
freedom.
So, like in that sense, Krishna is not telling Arjuna even then that that
You
you
have
should
to
do
do.
you have to do these, you have to do this, and
Yeah,
you have to
yeah,
do
yeah,
that,
yeah.
or any of that. And in the end, Arjuna, on his own willing, like without, like in one sense, he's already made up his mind, but he's already, like, he's given the freedom to decide what he wants to do, and he listens to what Krishna says, and he does what he has to do by devoting his. And Krishna says in the 18th chapter also in many parts that that all these things are ultimately leading, or in one sense, like all these different paths, they only work, like whether it is karma yoga or jnana yoga or dhyana
Yeah,
yoga or whatever different types of yogas that are there. They all work only if it's done in a devotional service, or in a devotional mood, or when you
yeah,
are
yeah. They
not
give
showing.
results. They give results
Yeah,
only if devotion is added to it. Yeah.
devotion is adequate, only then results will be there in that. So otherwise, there will be like a void, and it's clearly mentioned. So when I look at it, also I kind of wonder, like, how other people, if they write a book on the Bhagavad Gita, it's kind of like, if you don't like the verse itself, it's not like the verse is like say anything different. The verse is the same verse that is or there in the original Gita text. So you can't take that verse and then make a different interpretation of that and put it out and get people to like listen to it. But somehow people have taken like a verse that Krishna will, there'll be a verse where it's somewhere in the second or the second chapter or something, it is mentioned, like, about karma, where it mentions, not second chapter, I think maybe third or fourth, where the chapter itself is called Karma Yoga. And it's mentioned there, that, the process of Karma Yoga, where you do perform you perform some sacrifices to gain some kind of material benefit. But when you focus that to a devotional side, you'll
Yeah.
you'll get it automatically. And so that it's mentioned, that's mentioned on the original Sanskrit verse. But
Right. Right.
people are taking that and, like, interpreting that original Sanskrit verse into something else,
Something
which I
else. Yeah.
find very like strange. But I mean, how can you do that without sounding very, obviously wrong or hypocritical? And
I guess it becomes popular. If people want to hear that diluted version, that is how they get away with it. And as for
I've
this,
actually
yeah,
also just, sorry, I interrupt. Actually,
yeah,
I've just seen. So there are many people, like, on YouTube also. I've seen, like, a lot of the there are a lot of people who have been I don't know the name of these people, but they're like a couple or whatever. They've written a book. They're not part of any bhakti tradition or anything like
Right.
that. They're like yoga teachers basically.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of the people who get into yoga or like yoga philosophy, people who study the Yoga Sutras and you know that are into
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
Patanjali's
Yeah.
yoga
Yeah.
schools.
Sutras. Yeah.
So those who are into that side, they have their own interpretation of the Gita. And so this couple, I saw a video where they were talking about how they wrote their version of the Gita, but they didn't write. They said like I remember like what they were saying was that we didn't go verse by verse. We didn't. We didn't. We didn't bother to write on every single verse and give our commentaries on it. We just took the main important verses and then
I
we
see.
gave our own we gave our own version of that in the Prabhupada book. And I was like, and also like some of the things that don't work for this time are also not mentioned in this book or whatever they've written and all stuff.
I
But
see.
also,
Uh-huh.
but also then at that time I was thinking like but this is not like exactly what is present, because otherwise if you write something that is your own version of what I mean, it's fine. You can write your version. There are many, like Eknath Easwaran is another author that has written the Bhagavad Gita as one verse and all. But at least there are authors have at least like written like they've taken every verse of the Gita and they've
Yeah,
written
you have
something.
to take. You have to
So,
take every verse. You can't just
but
selectively take what you think
yeah,
suits the time and.
and then so this person and these couple they done that, and I don't know, like they were trying to push a message for the people basically in the West of what they think the West would understand from the Gita and nonsense. And I was like, oh, that's not, doesn't
Right.
seem
Yeah,
nice.
it doesn't seem right, but it's happening all the time. And basically, it is a form of covered atheism, because if you accept these words were spoken by a real God, by the Supreme Lord, then you can't just fiddle as you like unless you think, oh, that God doesn't matter. What God? What? I mean, I can also comment. So it is a form of concealed atheism, whether they promote it like that or not. Anyway, it's that's why it is so important to hear and to read and everything from the right sources. It's because otherwise our consciousness, it may be stimulating sometimes. And I think what happened here with this particular misinterpretation which Prabhupada is attacking, we just mentioned the name of that scholar and statesman. I think it is the scholarly speculative intellectual angle. They have to do something with what they are given. They have to twist and turn it a little. Actually, traditionally, even the word muni means someone who can stir that topic and bring a different angle to it. So, mundane and material version of that is what we are seeing when people play around with what is clearly said by the Lord Himself and twist it, and they are doing it maybe for selfish motives, because they brought a new the whole motivation for all this is to get name and fame, to be considered someone who wrote something original and original take on it. It is not an honest and genuine inquiry. An honest, genuine inquiry sometimes actually, like genuine research, can produce very interesting results in any subject. That's very different from twisting and turning what's already been established in a certain subject, just so that you get your spotlight, your time in the internet or whatever publishing world. Okay, the next para, please. There are some who are demonic.
There are some who are demonic. They also think of Krishna but enviously. Just like King Kamsa, Krishna's Emperor. He was also thinking of Krishna always, but he thought of Krishna as his enemy. He was always in anxiety, wondering when Krishna would come to kill him. That kind of thinking will not help us. One should be thinking of Krishna in devotional love. That is bhakti. One should cultivate the knowledge of Krishna continuously. What is that favorable cultivation? It is to learn from a bona fide teacher. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we have several times explained that his body is not material but is eternal. Blissful knowledge. This kind of talk about Krishna will help one become a devotee. Understanding Krishna otherwise from wrong source will prove fruitless.
Will
One
prove
should
fruitless. Yeah, one should therefore engage
one
his
should therefore,
mind.
yeah, one should. You want to read or
Okay, yeah, I'll read. One should therefore engage his mind in the eternal form, the primal form of Krishna, with conviction in his heart. the author of the commentary, Srila Prabhupada is pushing this point about form, because the formless God, it is pretty hopeless. It's attractive to many, but the formless God means you can't really develop a loving relationship, because there is nothing personal there. It's not a personal God. One should therefore engage his mind in the eternal form, the primal form of Krishna, with conviction in his heart that Krishna is the supreme. He should engage himself in worship. There are hundreds of thousands of temples in India for the worship of Krishna, and devotional services practiced there. When such practice is made, one has to offer obeisances to Krishna. One should lower his head before the deity and engage his mind, his body, his activities, everything. That will make one fully absorbed in Krishna without deviation. This will help one transfer to Krishna Loka. One should not be deviated by unscrupulous commentators. One must engage in the 9 different process of devotional service. Shravanam, what is it? Shravanam,
Shravana,
Kirtanam,
Kirtanam,
Vishnu, Vishnu.
Vishnu
That
Smaranam.
one. Pada Sevanam, that one. Yeah, okay. One should engage in the 9 devotional service, and beginning with hearing and chanting about Krishna, and pure devotional service is the highest achievement of human society. The 7th and 8th chapters of the Bhagavad Gita have explained pure devotional service to the Lord, that is free from speculative knowledge, mystic yoga, and fruitive activities. Those who are not purely sanctified may be attracted by different features of the Lord, like the impersonal Brahmajyoti and the localized Paramatma, but a pure devotee directly takes to the service of the Supreme Lord. Please read the last paragraph. There is a beautiful poem.
Yeah. There is a beautiful poem about Krishna in which it is clearly stated that any person who is engaged in the worship of demigods is most unintelligent and cannot achieve at any time the supreme abode of Krishna. The devotee in the beginning may sometimes fall from the standard, but still he should be considered superior to all other philosophers and yogis. One should always engage in Krishna consciousness. One who always engages in Krishna consciousness should be
Consciousness.
understood to be a perfectly saintly person. His accidental non-devotional activities will diminish, and he will soon be situated without any doubt in complete perfection. The pure devotee has no actual chance to fall down, because the Supreme Godhead personally takes care of his pure devotees. Therefore, the intelligent person should take directly to the process of Krishna consciousness and happily live in this material world. He will eventually receive the supreme award of Krishna.
Okay,
Thus
one
ends the
minute.
commentary of the poem. Yeah.
Yeah. So the 9th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, in the matter of the most confidential knowledge. What is this reference to a beautiful poem? Any clue?
Uh,
I think it is Shankaracharya's, which later M.S. Subbulakshmi put into song. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam Mudamate.
is
Nahi
it
Nahi
that?
Rakshate. Meaning nothing else is going to help you, because Shankaracharya otherwise had made many prayers to many demigods. But at the end of his life, he is supposed to have created this, that nothing is going to help you. Mudamate, you stupid,
Yeah.
you just surrender to Govinda Govinda.
Yeah, it could be that. Yeah, it could be that.
So otherwise,
But
I'm
there's
wondering.
but there's but there's so many poems written by all these, like there's this prayer of Akrura, and there's prayer of Narmad, and there's the prayer of Shiva, or the
No, but
poem.
specifically saying that demigod worship is a waste of time, is unintelligent.
Yeah, that is definitely Shankaracharya is what he said that
Yeah.
is there. But I don't know because Prabhupada has this love and hate relationship with Shankaracharya. Sometimes he will say that
Right, right.
Shankaracharya is spreading all this thing, and sometimes he will say that the great Shankaracharya has even the great Shankaracharya has mentioned this, and so we should consider what he said very seriously. So.
That's true. Anyway, so we finally ended the 9th chapter, and that's great. And now, next class, we start the 10th chapter. Okay? Shall we end the recording here? Because it's almost
Yeah.
6:15. Okay?
So
All
finally
right.
we have finished. Finally we finished the ninth
Yeah,
chapter.
yeah, that's a great achievement, because